around the corner, see what my baby's doing. She may be stewing, she may be Susie Qing. I want to know what my baby's doing. I'm going back to the house and peep through the crack. I'm gonna stop that cat before he come out the bag. I want to know what my baby's doing. Upstairs and hiding low. Gonna stop that stud before he breaks it all. I want to know what my baby's doing. Listen here, boys, I hear a groan. It sounds like something is going on wrong. I want to know what my baby's doing. I'm going through the alley, got to hit him all. He didn't pay my baby after he got off. I want to know what my baby's doing. Was red, put the law on me. It was red, put the law on me. She had me put in jail, then she came and went my bail. It was red, yes, it was red. It was red, who bought all my clothes. It was red, who bought all my clothes. She kept me on my feet long as she could walk the streets. It was red, yes, it was red. Was red, put up all my clothes. Red, what up all my clothes? She cut up all my clothes, then she put me out of door. It was red, yes, it was red. It was red, who cried with fright. It was red, who cried with fright. She said she'd treat me right if I whip her every night. It was red, yes, it was red.
cats just all beat down. The way you made that chorus sound. Let's take a drag, then drain it dry, cause I feel like going to town. Oh, watch it satchel all your horn. We'll jam it till the early morning. If you can't take tea, well, drink some corn, cause I feel like going to town. Or swing it, piano, bass, Satan drum. Oh, Mr. Guitar, let me hear you strum. Let's pitch a boogie, kick that gong. Watch those rugged Susie down. Please swing this music round and round, cause I feel like going to town. I'm so glad you's back again. I'm so glad you's back again. Babe, I've been in and off a strain. I'm so glad to have you by my side. I'm so glad to have you by my side. 'Cause my love for you has never died. So glad you have seen the light. I'm so glad you have seen the light. I'll always love you long as you act right. I'm so glad to see you looking tight. I'm so glad to see you looking tight. Let's get some whiskey and have a ball tonight.
We will now have a safety message.
Greetings, soars and distinguished guests. I hope you all are healthy and safe during this meeting. And as we gather to conduct Delta business, whether in our homes, for virtual meetings, or in a physical venue, it is important for us to be Delta ready. Please take a moment to identify 2 exits in your current location. Knowing where the exits are is essential for an efficient emergency evacuation. As you know, the centerpiece of Delta's National Emergency Response Plan is the Delta Red Envelope, which you should carry with you at all times. Should an incident occur, this document could save your life. Additionally, during the post-COVID-19 pandemic period, please continue to adhere to the public health guidelines of your local community. Stay safe, soars and guests, and always be Delta ready.
Thank you. Good evening. I am Joan Conway, a member of the Annapolis Alumnae chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. I am also the chair of the chapter's Arts and Letters Committee, which our book falls under. On behalf of the Arts and Letters Committee, I welcome you to our first discussion of this sorority year. If you have been here before, we say welcome. If this is your first time with us, we are happy to meet you and glad you're here with us. Before we get started, there's some housekeeping matters we need to take care of. First, we planned this book club for you, and we want to hear your thoughts and comments. Please place in the chat where you are viewing us from. This book club discussion will be done in 2 segments. The first half will be discussion of the novel itself. Again, we want to hear your thoughts and comments. The second half, we will gain insight on the true historical relationship between African Americans and the Jewish community. We will learn this knowledge from Dr. Sammy Miller, history professor at Bowie State University. We will formally introduce Dr. Miller at the top of the second half. We also have on our virtual platform Dr. Thelma T. Daly, who is the 16th National President of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and also she is a member of the Annapolis Alumnae chapter, our chapter. Dr. Daly, if you're here, please say hello so that the camera locates you. Okay. Dr. Sammy Miller, history professor at Bowie State University, please say hello so that the virtual cameras can locate you.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. I'll now give you Mrs. Deirdre Peters, president of the Annapolis Alumnae chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, who will bring you a formal greeting.
Thank you, Sora Joan. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Annapolis Alumnae Chapter's virtual book discussion of The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store by James McBride. As Sora Joan indicated, I am Deirdre Peters. I'm the president of the Annapolis Alumnae Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and it is my honor to welcome each of you to this evening's celebration of literature, legacy, and community. Delta Sigma Theta has a long-standing tradition of promoting the arts. Our Arts and Letters Commission, established in 1973 by our 15th National President, Lillian P. Benbow, continues to inspire and uplift through creative expression. Here in Annapolis, we proudly carry that torch through programs like this one. This year marks a remarkable milestone, 20 years of our Delta Reads Book Club. For 2 decades, this beloved program has served as a space for dialogue, discovery, and sisterhood. We began this journey with The Other Wes Moore, by now Governor Wes Moore, and since then we've explored more than 15 impactful titles spanning fiction, nonfiction, and social commentary. Our book discussions have featured New York Times bestselling authors, thought leaders, and community partners, including health professionals, museum curators, and scholars from Bowie State University and the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. Each conversation has deepened our understanding and strengthened our bonds as a community of readers and thinkers. Tonight's selection, The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store, is a powerful exploration of humanity, resilience, and the interconnectedness of people navigating differences and injustice. It's a story that reminds us of the courage found in compassion, a theme that deeply aligns with our sorority's values and purpose. Thank you for joining us for this special evening. We invite you to stay connected with our chapter by visiting our website and following us on our social media platforms for updates and future programs and events. Without further ado, I now turn the program back over to our wonderful moderator, Joan Conway.
Thank you, Soror President. I have a question for our technology team. Is there an echo in the computer, or is it just on my end? Did anyone else hear echo?
I don't hear an echo, Soror Joan.
Okay, we'll continue. First question for everybody. In the novel, we see the lives of many people who live on Chicken Hill, a neighborhood described as having ramshackle houses and dirt roads, where Blacks, Jews, and other immigrants lived their lives because they could not afford to live anyplace else. So we have the first question: did this description of the neighborhood prompt memories of residential areas you know of or even have lived? Now, I came up with this question as part of this discussion, but I got a couple phone calls from persons saying that they lived in a neighborhood such as that. And there's a person on the phone that I want to answer this question as well as other people. Naz Afi, are you on the phone? On the
I am. Thank you. Thank you, Ms.
Okay.
Joan.
Yes.
This is a question. Well, the issue is near and dear to my heart, and I first want to apologize for not being on camera. I'm having issues with my camera on my computer today, but nevertheless, I'm here, and am happy that Joan asked me to share my personal story. So I am born and raised in Buffalo, New York, and back in the 40s, the Jewish community and Black people worked together in Buffalo, particularly concentrated in the downtown area of Buffalo. There were stores and the shops, the butcher shops, and the relationship between our Jewish friends and the Black community was one of helping each other and coexisting very well with each other. Black people patronized the stores, the corner stores. There were many corner stores where you could go and buy milk, eggs, bread, cornmeal, flour, potatoes, and vegetables. So Black people patronized our Jewish friends, and in a reciprocal manner, our Jewish friends, they also tried to help Black youth in the community by doing things as asking some of the young boys and paying them to come and shovel their snow. You all know Buffalo, New York always has had blizzards all the time from way back when. Our Jewish friends would, some of the shop owners would come and have some of the young Black youth come and do their snow removal for them. Now, the 50s and 60s and the 40s were full of a lot of this relationship building. As I said, it really started in the town area of Buffalo with the communities coming together. Then around the 50s, there was more of a movement by our Jewish friends downtown to come towards further into the east side, what's considered the east side. And particularly there was a hub area around Humboldt Parkway and East Ferry Street. It was a hub for Jewish life, and they stayed and cultivated that area over many years. As a matter of fact, I was raised in that area. I was raised in Humboldt and East Ferry, and across the street and down the street, Mr. Rosman, he had the corner store, and it was always a
Mm-hmm.
treat to go to his store. And he treated everyone with respect, which was one of the things that was so clearly part of the friendship and the relationship. My family was the first Black family who moved into that neighborhood in 1949, and it
Mm-hmm.
remained that way until probably about 1956 when other Black families started to move in. As I go further, as I had said, this area was a hub. Well, back around, I suppose the 60s, then many of our Jewish families started moving to North Buffalo. Um, and it became a very significant Jewish neighborhood around Hurdle Avenue, what's known as the Hurdle Avenue
Mm-hmm.
section. And as a matter of fact, the high school for our Jewish neighborhoods was Bennett High School. And it became integrated the more Black families that moved into the area. It was
Okay.
considered the premier high school, and one of its things that they felt so very good about was the integration part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that it was mostly Jewish kids and Black kids. Now,
Okay.
I just want to say this other one thing. Temple Beth David was the first synagogue founded as the synagogue affiliated with conservative Judaism late in the 1920s in this area, in the Humboldt Ferry Corridor. And they acquired some land at 626 Humboldt Parkway to start that synagogue. Members relocated to North Buffalo, and they sold that building in 1955. But while they were
Okay.
there, there was um, there was ladies clubs, and particularly I want to just mention they started a Boy Scouts group because they had a group of young people. They started a Boy Scout troop, and there were several Black boys that were part of
Okay.
um, that troop, and that was unheard of back then. Like I said, this is like early 1950s when the South was going through a whole lot, but Buffalo had some good things. Now, the last thing I
Mm-hmm.
just want to mention is that this Temple Beth David, this synagogue at 626 Humboldt Parkway, they sold that building in 1955, and lo and behold, that became the Faith Baptist Church. I'm sorry, the Faith Missionary Baptist Church, which
Okay.
is still standing, which still has a
Today.
thriving community. It is the church where I was baptized. That is my
Okay.
church home, and it once was Temple Beth David.
Very
And
good.
so
Nas,
all of this
we
history is
thank
in the
you
Jewish
for
Buffalo History
sharing
Center.
that with us. And I see that you have a favorable viewpoint of the past. There
Yes.
were Blacks and Jews worked together. In the chat, we have Marley Osbrooks, who also put in a similar comment. So would you like to further expand upon that?
Yeah, of course. Hi, I'm Marley Osbrooks. Yeah, I went to a school called Georgetown Day School, growing up, and there is a large community of Jewish students, and also there's a lot of diversity there. It started because there was no places for the Jewish kids to go to school and no places for the Black kids to go to school, so it was the first integrated school in DC, and they have this level of like, oh, there's like a racial dynamic. So they opted for all of the students to call their teachers by their first names. And that is something that continued from then onwards. So growing up with the school I went to, we always called our teachers by their first names to kind of level the playing field.
Okay, and is that school still there?
Mm-hmm. That school is still there to this day.
Okay, what's the name of that school so we'll know?
Georgetown Day School.
Oh, that's in Rockville, I believe.
No, it's in Washington, D.C.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Ellie put in the chat that her experience in New York was very different. Would you like to expand upon that for us?
For sure. So I grew up in New York City, Brooklyn, and Queens,
Mm-hmm.
and I grew up in the 80s and 90s. And my experience was very different in that the communities were very segregated. So we had parts of Brooklyn that were literally would just get closed off during Juris celebrations. And I think it was mainly like the Midwood area of Brooklyn and parts near East New York, but more towards like the Empire Boulevard area. We had total communities that were just all Jewish communities, all Jewish stores,
Mm-hmm.
all Jewish everything. And there were areas where African Americans, we were not welcome, to go to their stores. We would be profiled very, very heavily. It was not as favorable or as a joint community as others have experienced.
Okay. And you said that was in the 80s?
So yeah, 80s and 90s.
Okay. And see,
The Brooklyn, New York, Manhattan areas were very
mm-hmm.
similar, where they had like fully almost segregated Jewish communities.
Mm-hmm. So now we see two different viewpoints. We have Nas, who talked about a wonderful relationship, and even Marley, who also talked about a great relationship, in the 40s and 50s. And now we hear you had a different experience. So it's great to learn all of that. So we appreciate you sharing. Anyone else got a comment about that before we move to the next question? Miss Perrin, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
Yes, hi, good afternoon. I'm Ajaya. Nice to hear everyone's comments so far. I agree with Elle. I remember I'm also from Brooklyn, New York, and I remember in the late 2000s, early 2010s, my private school was actually bought out by a growing Jewish community, and it was actually turned into a synagogue. So even now, I live here in Annapolis, and when I go back home, there's just a plethora of synagogues that have taken over, not even just my old school, but other, or I should say, used to be staples in the community. So.
Okay, thank you for sharing. One more comment with this question. Shirley, you put in the chat, we had Finkelstein's in Parole. Was that a department store or a shoe store?
Okay, can you hear me?
We can hear you now, yes.
Okay, yeah, well, mine is not as dramatic as everyone else's. It's just that I remember distinctly, when I was about 7 or 8 years old, we had a corner store, and it was called Finkelstein's. And I remember my mother giving me a brown piece of paper. She would put a list of items on that brown piece of paper and tell me, Shirley, take it up to Mr. Finkelstein. I give him the brown piece of paper, and he give me a bag of food, and I come back home. And
Wow.
as an adult, I know now that we were probably buying on credit. But I think he knew everybody in the area, because all I had was that piece of paper with a list of things on it. And it wasn't like, and I guess he knew me. He knew probably whose child I was. Because I
Yes.
was really very young when that happened.
Oh, okay. And that's going to lead us into our next question, but I saw that Betty Turner has her hand raised.
Yes, ma'am, I do. Good evening, everyone. I want to expand on what Sora Shirley is saying. There were actually two Finkelsteins in Parole. Shirley, are you referring to the one on the corner of West Street and Old Solomon's Island Road, right?
The one on West Street was like the middle of West Street.
Yeah, okay, all right. Well, then there was one on Old Solomon's Island Road. I think that was, yeah, so there was another Finkelstein's, and
Okay.
also, and again, that was a grocery store. And then maybe later, further, closer to the corner of West Street and Old Solomons Island Road. There was another grocery store, and that was Richmond's. And there was also a Richmond's drugstore further into inner West Street. But the one in Parole was a grocery store, and that was sort of more modern, sort of like at least you could have a grocery cart to go around the store. The others you just went and picked up. There was no walking through aisles or anything. But and as Shirley said, I know that the one Richmond, that definitely was, you could buy food on credit there. So,
that takes us to our very next question, which is, in the Heaven and Earth grocery store is owned by Mosh and ran by his wife Shona. I'm hopefully I'm pronouncing these names correctly. The grocery store is the center of the neighborhood life. Did you come across an entity that kept the community together, such as this? Or are there places in your life that were like the Heaven and Earth grocery store? So I would like to give an answer to this. I grew up in Anne Arundel County in Gambles, Maryland with my grandmother. There was a store there next to the dairy farm, which was owned by the Department of Navy, that was called German's IGA. And it was a store where Mr. German allowed Black families, and really all families, to buy groceries on credit. Now, that was really helpful because back then, a lot of parents had a lot of kids, 5, 6, 7. And my grandmother raised a bunch of kids, so she had a revolving door of kids, including myself. And that really helped her because she could buy groceries, as they say, on time. Shirley and Betty had mentioned that. Has anybody else experienced that? I see the hand of our chapter president, Deirdre Peters.
Thank you, Sword Jones. So that you mentioning IGA, and my great aunt called it Red German. I don't know if you've heard it by that name, but my family is from Waterbury, Gambles. I do remember going to that. We called it a market back then to purchase groceries. So I sincerely appreciate you sharing that. And it did bring back memories. My family also lived in Annapolis, and my older aunts and uncles remember Finkelstein's and Richmond's.
Okay. Does anybody else have a similar story of such a store in a different city or locale? If you do, you can go ahead and speak. Brenda?
Hi, this is Brenda Pelzer. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you.
DC area before I moved to Millersville. And there was a store, I remember there was a corner store. We called it the corner store. However, it was by some Koreans, but that's when the Koreans had migrated in Washington, D.C., and they started taking over a lot of the corner stores when the Blacks started selling their stores, because a lot of the corner stores in D.C. years ago was owned by Blacks, and they started selling it to the Koreans. However, I remember back then when we used to get things on credit at the at the corner store, and I think that was a way that the Koreans was trying to kind of like migrate in the community and kind of buy us, so they would befriend a lot of the neighborhood families.
Well, thank you for that. That raises another question. Does anybody have experience with grocery stores or corner stores that were owned by the Black community? Anyone? I don't see any hands.
Did you say
I'm sorry, sir.
In the Black community, Sword Joan?
Yes. Betty Austin, I see your hand raised.
Yes, I'm from New Orleans, and in New Orleans, we had lots of Black-owned grocery stores. Pardon the way I pronounce it, but this is the way we say it in New Orleans. It was the
Mm-hmm.
Venice Market, which any other place would be Venice Market. We had the Circle Market, which was one of the largest grocery stores and still in existence near the 7th Ward, which is near the Treme area, where free people of color initially settled, which is where the Pope is from. That is his old neighborhood. So there were lots of places like that around. New Orleans was a different city in that there were Jewish-owned stores, there were some Asian-owned stores, Italian-owned stores, and Blacks. But in my family, we supported basically the Black-owned stores and one Italian store in the area.
Okay, thank you for that. Marsha Johnson, you have your hand raised.
Yes, sir. So I'm from the south side of Chicago, and the stores that we had, of course, we had the big stores, Jewel's and Dominic's. Those were our major stores in Chicago. But then we had stores, and we called them the little store or the little store, as we said it back then. And they were all owned by Black people. I remember going to the little store and like getting, well, I didn't eat this, but people would get pickles and put peppermint sticks in them, or you would get what we call wine candy. As a matter of fact, I thought it was still called wine candy until a few years ago. I heard it was called, I found out they were Jolly Ranchers. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. But people would just go to the little store and get, their little main staples. But they were all owned by Black people on the South Side when I was growing up, and that was the 60s and the 70s.
So you saw a change after the 60s with desegregation.
So no, Chicago is one of the most segregated. It was one of the most segregated cities in the whole United States, and so I never saw any white people. But the whole time I grew up on the South Side, except for my teachers in school, there were no white people at all on the South Side where I live. Or anywhere on the South Side. And then you couldn't go to the North Side. You knew that not to go to the North Side. So this is just how it was in Chicago. I see integration now, and it amazes me. But I don't know anything about the North Side of Chicago because I couldn't go there when I was growing up. So.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the people in the novel. The two people that stood out were Nate and Addie, who worked for Mosh and Chona. Nate worked in the theater. Addie works in the grocery store. The two couples, one Black, the other Jewish, developed a special relationship. What do you think those four persons had in common, or what those two couples had in common? So, Betty, is your hand still raised, or you want to answer the question? Naz, I see your hand.
No, I'm sorry. I meant to put it down because I just wanted to say I think it's important that we continue to draw attention to the fact that there were Black establishments back in the 1950s in several parts of our cities that we cannot forget about. That were Black owned and flourished.
Yes.
That's all.
Okay. Soror Betty Turner, your hand was raised.
Trying to lower my.
Okay. So
no.
I'd like to hear your thoughts and comments on the two couples. Brenda, if you're talking, we can't hear you. Okay. Brandy Blake Parker. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This is so exciting.
Okay.
What I noticed most about the two couples, of course, they were minorities. They were two minority couples in their community. And the way I took the information in was that they were kind of a corner to this triad of minorities and the whites in the area. So we had we had the colored individuals or African Americans, and then we had the whites who seemed to be ruling and or orchestrating everything.
Mm-hmm.
That was the biggest thing that popped out to me.
Okay. So you think the two couples were friends because they were both minorities and had a similar experience with the white community? You know,
Correct.
the
And
whites pushed them out. Mm-hmm.
And
But
it
did
also
you
sounds
see
like
in the book that some of the Jewish families wanted to move downtown, basically? Because, you know, Nate and his wife, Nate really wanted to move, but I think Chona was like, no, we're not going down there. We're staying up here. Did you?
right.
Uh-huh.
I
So
did
you
see
saw
that.
that?
And I think too, a part of it was that because Shona was a native to that area, unlike her
Mm-hmm.
husband, and she grew up with the African Americans. She went to school with, oh goodness, I forgot her name, with the woman who now lived across the street from her, and they were like
Yes.
almost friends. So
Mm-hmm.
they were definitely in that boat together.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you for that. Nicole Pearsall, I saw your hand earlier.
Yes, I was just going to say one thing I did notice is that both families had strong women who voiced their opinions and
Mm-hmm.
made sure that those families stayed close. So I think somewhere in the book it said both of the men were quiet, but both of the women kind of were the glue that kind of held those relationships together, as
Mm-hmm.
far as I see.
Oh, it's funny you said that because I didn't pick up on that, but now that you stated that, that is true. Yes. Lavinia Calvin, I see your hand raised.
Where's my camera? Oh, yes, good evening.
Okay.
So I think both couples had an amazing way of just feeling the human heart. You know, for example, Moshe wanted to really do something else and be someplace else, but he had great compassion for Shona
Mm-hmm.
because she was beautiful and knew Torah and that sort of thing. And with Addie, Nate's family name was Love, and he had a speckled past. However, her love for humanity dug down into his heart and dripped with love and humanity and kind of
Mm-hmm.
got that shaky part out of him. And in the end of the story, you know, he helped Dodo in a way that no one else could. And
True.
her compassion for him had an effect on their marriage in the end, but they just had they took love to a different level, and it wasn't just physical,
Mm-hmm.
it was human and very practical.
Okay. Thank you for that. Shirley, I saw your hand raised, and then Dana Radar.
Yeah, what the character Nate, I really liked reading about him. I liked his story, and it reminded me of, and I'm sure which is true, that a lot of, I'm gonna say African Americans or blacks at the time were coming north because it was going to be a better life. They were just coming away from a life that they really couldn't tolerate anymore, and when they were coming north, they were leaving whole lives behind. You know, if it was a misery, they were leaving that
Mm-hmm.
misery behind and starting all over. Just like with
Mm-hmm.
Nate, his name was Nate Timblin, but when he was in the South, he was Nate Love. But he
Mm-hmm.
left Nate Love in the South, in the country, and came to be someone else. But we all
That's
know
true.
that he had a story. He did have a story.
Well, let me ask you this. Did Nate change his name because he was in some type of problems? He had some legal issues? You think that's
Well,
why he changed his name?
I think he changed his name for that for some reason, but he got caught up. His father, and please correct me if my interpretation is wrong, but his father was very abusive, and it
Mm-hmm.
sounded like his father killed his mother. And he, in turn, I think my interpretation is that he killed his father and he left town.
Yes.
He left as Nate Love and became Nate Timblin. And that's the way I interpreted what I read.
Okay. Dana, what's your comment?
My comment was, thank you for having me. How both of the couples, even though they were, I felt like the wives were more of the more passionate, the more courageous and compassionate of the two, but the husbands, through their loves of their wives, were the ones who actually worked and pretty much risked themselves to protect Dodo. I think he was the nephew of Addie, so not directly related, if I'm not mistaken. And then with Chona being from that area and her husband being an immigrant, still not directly connected to everything, but because they loved their wives so much, I feel like that pushed them to be a lot more compassionate about something that they might have, I guess, kept their heads down in the sand, out of like fear, wanting to not draw attention and get in trouble.
Okay.
So that's the comparison I saw with the two. It was just more the love of the wives really compelled them.
Okay, let's talk about one of the main characters in the book, and that is Dodo. Before we talk about him, the thing that jumped off the page to us was that, well, let me go back. In April of 2024, this book club here, we read a book called Madness, Race and Insanity in a Jim Crow Asylum, which was the true account of what happened at Crownsville State Hospital, which is here in the Annapolis area. And, you know, that hospital had a sordid history of abuse and doing patients wrong. For those of us who are familiar with the hospital or who have read the book, did you get memories of Pennhurst, where Dodo was sent to live? Nicole?
So absolutely. I was just, you know, I thought about, because I did read that book and was present for that book club, but I thought about just all the people that were there who were not necessarily mentally incapacitated. They just maybe, you know, were like Dodo. He was, you know, he was deaf and not necessarily, nothing was wrong with his mind. He just had an, you know, a physical ailment. And yeah, I did think about that. But it's sad to say that so many people, that happened to just so many people, not just in, you know, in Crownsville, all over.
Yes. Okay, I thought the same thing. And, you know, Dodo did not have a great experience, especially with Son of Man, which I could have just jumped through the book and choked. You know, he was just awful. Yeah. Who else I see? Shirley, is your hand still up, or you have a comment?
Okay, well, I left it up, but I do have a comment anyway. That yes, Crownsville and Pennhurst, they reminded me that almost like the same places, because Crownsville definitely is local for us, and we all know somebody who worked at Crownsville, and you heard the same types of stories that you read in this book here. So it was very familiar when I was reading some passages, and I would think Crownsville. That would pop right in my head. So I think James McBride, when he wrote this particular book, I bet he researched Crownsville also, because not that he was plagiarizing, but I think those institutions are just alike.
Yeah, and believe it or not, Pennhurst was a real place, just like Crownsville. I did look it up. I did notice that the author used a lot of real names and places, but he invented the stories around them. But when I was reading this, my first thought, like Shirley, was he must have read the Crownsville book and pulled pull something out of that. But when I researched Pennhurst, it had some of the same exact issues. And the main problem that community saw was that these persons were Black. Just like Dodo, there was nothing wrong with his mind, but he was just deaf. And we all know why Doc Roberts, who once again, I could jump through the page and shake, why he sent Dodo there. So how do you feel? Let's talk about Doc Roberts. First of all, let me ask you, did you like the man or not?
Oh, no.
I see a lot of shaking of the heads. No. Dana? Dana, you had a comment?
It's so many similarities to what's going on now, with old white men and authority thinking they know better for everything, for women, for immigrants, for Black people. It's just, and it's all about, at the end of the day, it's not about for our betterment. It's for power and control and racism, and they're just using the guys as something else. And it just reminded me. He just reminded me of just so many of them throughout the years, and even now what we're dealing with. So
now, do you think Doc Roberts would have not sent Dodo to Pennhurst if Dodo had not witnessed the rape scene, basically, or the sexual assault that he did on Chona, who was his mother in essence?
No.
I don't think he would have had his. I don't think he would have been as like obsessed with trying to get him there.
Okay.
Not that he cared either one way or another. But that's
Betty Turner, you had a comment?
Yeah, I did. And that I saw someone mention in the chat that they had been to Pennhurst. Could we hear some more from that person?
Did someone put in the chat that they went to or visited Pennhurst?
Yes, for Halloween or something.
It was Source Shonda.
Oh, I didn't see it. I can't see it.
She's able to,
Oh,
she's
yes.
able to mute or not.
I'm here. Yes,
Oh.
I'm here. Yes, I visited my husband and I and our daughters and our cousins. We went there so they have every year, I guess, Pennhurst Asylum. They turned everything into like haunted Halloween scary, things of that nature. So it's kind of like that now.
Okay.
So I did visit that a few years ago now. Before, yeah, but I had never heard of it prior to that. So knowing Crownsville, though, so from being from Annapolis, born and raised, I do know very much about Crownsville. But when I learned of Pennhurst Asylum, I was blown away because the history that I knew of Crownsville, I was like, wow, that's another one, So that was very interesting to see and experience, although it was a very different experience than what it was originally intended. But it was interesting to be in all of the different buildings and everything, because they literally have, each building is now decorated and, for night Halloween.
So the venue, Pennhurst, is still there, but is used as a Halloween event?
Yes, it's more so, an attraction now. Yes.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. Oof, didn't know that. Okay.
Yes.
Elle, is it Elle or Ellie? I want to make sure I pronounce your name correctly.
It's Elle. Thank you.
Okay.
So I just want to echo what Dana had mentioned. The Doc Roberts character really just echoes, kind of what we see today with white men in power using that power for their own benefit in order to hide the nefarious things that they're doing. And, kind of speaking up as if they don't have those types of skeletons in their closet. It's, the height of hypocrisy of being this upstanding doctor in the community, but really you're prone to deviance and using that power to exhibit control and to hide your own misdeeds.
Okay, Angela, I see your hand raised, please.
Hi, thanks for having me. I also think that he wanted to put Dodo away to show that he had control. He had control over Chona's body by raping her. He had control of silencing, even though he couldn't speak, by putting him away in Pennhurst. He had control over these people who he deemed were below him, and it's
Mm-hmm.
unfortunate. So I think by doing that, he was just trying to exert his control over the members of the community as the
Yeah,
white
and
man.
that goes back to what Els just stated too about that. Yeah. But even, I like you said, I think he did that to get back at Shona because she wouldn't date him or go out with him. And he must have been carrying a torch for her since high school or something. Because in his mind, he was going back like she didn't speak to me or she didn't go out with me or whatever. And here now he has he's the doctor in the town, which is interesting because none of the Black folks wanted to go to him unless they were absolutely at death's door because his treatment of Black patients, which we have seen before in a Black American history. Yes. Shirley, your hand's still up? Okay. Elle, your hand's still up, or you have another comment?
Yeah. So I did have another comment. If you look at, once again, the character of Doc Roberts in parallel to what we're seeing today, where the truth about someone's identity, the truth about someone's inner workings is ignored by the entire community. Shona made several attempts writing literature into the magazines and into the newspapers, publishing what he was really about. Everyone knew this man was marching in the Ku Klux Klan parade every single year, however many times it came up. They knew that. Everyone knew, and they did nothing. And it's just really a parallel to what we're seeing today, where we have so many leaders who are critically flawed, and everyone is seeing those flaws, but yet they're still allowed to be in their positions.
Let me ask you this. What were your favorite part of the novel? I'm going to say the way Dodo's escape from Pennhurst was organized. It took a lot of people, a lot of love for him to beat the system to get him out of that asylum. And the fact that, so many people, it was, Nate, oh gosh, the man that drives the egg cart, they called him Eggman. And then, Nate got rid of the I think her name was Miggy, and they served her sweet potato pie or pumpkin pie. And she's planning the escape route by cutting the pie apart, saying building A is here, building B is over here. This is the tunnel exit. I thought that was just genius by what the author did. So what were some of your favorite parts of the novel? Lavinia and Shirley.
Okay,
Hi,
this is Shirley. Mine was
yeah, I wrote in the chat about the blueberry, the pie.
okay.
And
Okay.
she was describing the tunnels, and she cut the pie and she sliced the slice in half, and she had one pointing to one tunnel, another pointing to another
Yes.
tunnel, and then she was speaking in riddles in terms of the cat and the mouse and how they would escape. So if anyone was looking or listening nearby, they would know that she was explaining how to escape. And then at the end of it, she says, and the most important thing in this whole thing is eggs. So she was talking about food, but she wasn't talking about food. And when she mentioned the eggs, that had to do with delivering eggs to 14 buildings in the winter by 6 a.m. and using that mechanism as an escape route.
Exactly. That was wonderful. Dana?
I was going to say that the best part of me was really just because the book was pretty heavy and it was a lot of, I guess not justice and, slaughter. It was just a lot of things going on that kind of brought a lot of emotions in me. The end of it, to see how Dodo lived a regular life, how it's peaceful, how his legacy kind of moved past everything that was going on, how he was a successful, father, grandfather, in spite of them trying to commit him, not viewing him as anything but disabled, and then how he died peacefully. And it kind of helped lift it, like all of that heaviness from like reading through over to say like, okay, all of this came through, but he still, in spite of all that, the center of all of this drama, like he still moved on to live like a beautiful, long, like peaceful and loving life. And so it was just symbol like how we triumph like so many other adversities and setbacks and injustices and murders and still, it's what we try to do. So it helped lift that up. So that was that was the best part for me.
Yeah, I think the community really pulled together to help Dodo. I just love that aspect of it. And Angela, I see your hand. The novel is listed as a mystery, but I forgot all about what happened in the very first chapter because I was so invested in all the lives of the people that live on Chicken Hill. Yeah. Angela?
Oh, for me, it was the kind of the reverse Underground Railroad aspect of it. Here it is that everybody's
Yes.
hiding in plain sight of what was going on. And he was going from north to south. And he found peace in South Carolina, so it's that aspect. And then my other part was the fact that Doc Roberts died. He died trying to hide his crimes and,
Yeah.
and left unfound for so many years. I mean, and really no one knew who he was. So he did all of these horrible things to everybody. People avoided him because they sensed his innate evilness. And then he essentially, his undoing was due to him trying to hide something. So I don't know which one I liked more, but I found both interesting. So.
Okay, we're going to talk 10 more minutes about the novel, and then we're going to hear from Dr. Miller. Let me see. Oh, what is your main takeaway from this novel? If you had to just use one word to describe this novel, what would it be? Miss Perrin?
Hi, and I apologize.
I don't
My
want to
camera.
butcher your first name. That's why I'm not going to say it.
That's all right.
Okay.
It's pronounced Ajaya.
Ajaya, okay.
I apologize. My camera's not working. I was working earlier. But one word the first word that comes to mind, excuse me, is riveting, just because I had put it in the chat earlier when you said, you really loved how the community came together to really help Dodo and just to make sure that the plan was a well-oiled machine. There really is strength in numbers. And I think that I think just with the human race in general, we've lost sight of just the community aspect of being a human being. And I think this book, even though it took place in the past, it really just showcased, okay, hey, we all have a common goal. We may not all get along. We may not all have the same background, but for the greater good, let's put all of that aside to accomplish what we need to. And this book was a phenomenal example of that. So yeah.
Exactly. Yes. And it had all people involved, especially the Black community. They mentioned the Pullman porters, after Dodo's escape, and then the two Jewish train men. I forget what their titles were, but they just followed instructions. Like, they didn't understand or knew what was going on with Nate and Dodo on the train, but they delivered Dodo and Nate to the Pullman porters who knew everything. So the comment about Underground Railroad is perfect. Yeah. Betty Austin?
Yes, I guess one of the main themes for me was love. I guess in a sense the community in love, but there was the love of the various couples, the love of the couples for Dodo, the love of the individuals for their community, even though they were living on Chicken Hill, the love of the grocery store. So it was that central theme of love, which to me was arcing throughout this entire book.
Okay, yes. So who do you think the book was really about? Because I really thought the book was going to be about the murder and the person in the well, but it didn't turn out that way.
I have one last thing to say.
Yes.
And I know this, for years as a young woman growing up in the 40s and the 50s in Louisiana and then living in the South, I thought white people liked one another and they didn't like blacks. Well, one thing I read and I've discovered as I've gotten older, they don't like each other either. So
yeah.
If you notice in this book, the Poles didn't like the Romanians. The
Exactly.
Romanians didn't like some other group. The Italians were ostracized. And of course, we knew the Irish, if they had been more Irish, they weren't liked by anyone either. So they don't like one another either.
Yeah, a lot of that came through. Any other comments or questions that you had about the book? This is open to anybody. What are your thoughts about the book itself?
So I think similar to what Betty found in looking at the different groups and how they interact and how they felt about each other, it kind of takes me back to very early on in the book where the character Malachi and Moshe were talking, and Malachi was really kind of let's call it salty with Moshe about him being more American and kind of forgetting where he came from. And that speaks to kind of, once again, if you look at where we are today, the de-identifying of a people into this homogenous American identity, which I think allows some white folks and some folks in general really to what's the word, I think, to forget about accountability. To create this persona of something else that is somehow greater or better than what they were. And I saw that in the way that Malachi interacted with Moshe and felt about Moshe and his way of feeling like, well, America is great because it's opportunity. And I don't want to think about where I came from. That was horrible. Where Malachi's like, I'm totally proud of being Eastern European. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And at one point, and it stuck in my brain, Malachi said, the Negro has the better of it in that at least they know who they are. And I think that's a lot.
Yeah, that was a profound statement.
Yes. And I think about where we are today, and I can see that, right? I can see where a lot of the rhetoric that we're hearing is based on that erasing of history.
Okay.
Whereas for a lot of us, we don't forget.
Exactly. And in reading the novel, especially with some of the majority of the Jewish families on Chicken Hill, they really wanted to move downtown and assimilate with the whites so they could, they wanted to be accepted by that and not be associated with the Black community up on Chicken Hill. Yeah. Okay, Lavinia Calvin, you're going to have the last comment, and then we're going to take a 5-minute break, and we're going to hear from Dr. Miller. Okay? We can't hear you. You're on mute.
Yes. In addition to the backdrop of the Eastern European Jews, different aspects, and other types of immigrants, there was a music scene at the dance hall
Mm-hmm.
where the Afro-Cuban group was trying to decide whether they thought they were going to open, and Lionel Hampton's band thought they were going to open. And what that dynamic proved was a precursor or preview of the upcoming Hispanic presence in the United States as immigrants. And it wasn't just from Mexico, it was Puerto Rican, Dominican, from all over the diaspora. That was a preview there.
Okay, thank you. Okay, everyone, if you have no more comments about the novel, stay tuned for part 2. We're going to hear about the real history of Black Americans and the Jewish population. And we're going to hear from Dr. Miller. So please take a 5-minute break and be back to join us. We got 30 more seconds before we restart. Want to thank you to everyone who had comments on the Heaven and Earth grocery store. The book truly gave us something to talk about and to think about.
Joan, just let me know when you're ready.
Okay. And we're ready right now. We will start with a formal introduction of Dr. Sammy Miller from Bowie State University.
Joan, are you ready for me to make
Yes,
the
we're
introduction?
ready. Thank you.
Okay, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Sammy Miller. He has an extensive, esteemed background. He holds a PhD in legal history from the Catholic University of America and received his MAT in history from Trinity University and a BA in history from Delaware State University. He has completed a postdoctoral experience at Stanford University in constitutional law and history. He has served as assistant for projects and community services at the Association of the Study for Afro-American Life and History in Washington, D.C., and later as executive director. His tenure at Bowie State University is great. Dr. Miller served as assistant to the vice president for planning and development. He held 3 terms as chairman of the Department of History and Government and is currently serving a 4th term. He was also the former dean of the School of Arts and Sciences and special assistant to the provost in the Office of Academic Affairs. Dr. Miller is the former editor of the Negro History Bulletin and author of numerous articles in scholarly and popular publications, including the Journal of Negro History, Black Collegian, the Journal of American History, Black Scholar, the Journal of Southern History, Negro History Bulletin, Black Books Bulletin, The Historian, and The Crisis. In addition to all of these things, he has major accomplishments. Just to list a few, he's been a Board of Trustees Scholar at Catholic University, Penfield Fellow, and a Knight of Columbus Fellow. He holds an NAFEO, I'm sorry, I don't know what that acronym stands for, Research Achievement Award, and is a frequent guest lecturer before learned societies, federal agencies, and community organizations. He has membership in the Phi Alpha Theta National Honor Society, Kappa Delta Pi National Honor Society, a 4th degree Knight of Columbus, and a life member of Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity. He has he's recognized internationally at the Oxford University in England, and most recently appointed to 3 boards at the United States Department of State, Senior Foreign Service, Senior Executive Pay Performance, and Department Senior Review Board for distinguished and meritorious service, whose nominees are recommended to the White House for presidential awards. Dr. Miller was a public member of the United States Agency for International Development, most recently, the Criminal Division of the Inspector General, Foreign Service of the United States Department of Agriculture, Plant and Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, and the Department of Commerce Foreign Service. In addition, he was granted the title of Distinguished Professor for the College of Arts and Sciences at Bowie State University. Dr. Miller has traveled extensively for the National Endowment of the Humanities, where he visited many cultural institutions in the United States, including the Chinese Cultural Foundation of San Francisco, the Pierpont Morgan Library in New York, the Arizona State Museum, along with a number of African American museums throughout the country, including the Rhode Island Black Heritage Society in Providence and the historic Mother Bethel AME Church in Philadelphia. His international visits include the People's Republic of China, Japan, various parts of Africa, West Europe, and the Caribbean. He is married to the former Gloria J. Selman, and they reside in Glendale, Maryland. It is with this that I welcome Dr. Miller to our Delta Reads Book Club. Thank you for being with us tonight.
What can I say? First of all, I'd like to thank all the participants. Your responses to the novel were just outstanding. Almost brought me to tears because you brought your personal experiences and life experiences. Are you hearing me clearly, everyone? Yeah, I was just overwhelmed. For the Deltas, I must say this. My cousin Grace Toller worked in the national office. This is her 82nd year in Delta. I love to show her off. I bring her around so young Deltas can meet a great soror of your sorority. And Grace just thrills my heart. She's close to me. She lives close to me. And whenever I can show her off, I love to tell people, this is her. She's 101, by the way, in very good shape, still sings on the choir, does everything. I took her to breakfast one morning. She says, give me pork bacon, fried chicken, and sausage. She ate all three. They just don't make women like that. She pledged at Bluefield State, but she did work in the national office. So that makes me very, very proud. I am a great-grandfather of 11. My granddaughters went to Bowie State. Joan, as you know, your presiding officer tonight, was my student. And so I think my greatest accomplishment is teaching at Bowie State. This is my 53rd year at Bowie State. I'm teaching, that's right. I'm teaching the grandchildren of my former students. And so my first love are students. I volunteer for anything they ask me to do. I tell nobody no. And so when Joan asked, I said, but I'm doing midterm exams. She said, Dr. Miller, you got to come. So I just put everything down and just read this book like I was supposed to. I did what I was told. You can see that my wife's got me trained well because I do what I'm told to do. And so talk about Delaware Valley. When I got the novel, it blew my mind because I was born in Philadelphia, but I was raised in Wilmington, not far from Pottstown. And so that area is very unique. And what makes it special, I don't want to talk too much. I want to respond to the questions that Jones has put together. But the Quakers founded Pennsylvania. And the Quakers were running from the Roman Catholic Church, which I was raised in. They were running from the Anglicans, and they were running from the Puritans. And so William Penn begged for a charter where people could be free. And that's why if you go to a Quaker service, there's no preacher there. You don't get up and have series of hymns. They talk about what happened during the day. And when you see these Quakers and Mennonites around town, they steal a horse and buggy. They live a very simple life, but they still had slaves. With all that, that's right, with all that desire for freedom, they still had slaves. But what hit the Quakers, and remember, we're talking about 1700 now, what hit them early on was they knew, reading the Bible, they could not honor God and Jesus if they kept slaves. So they're the only white people that will free their Africans in the 1700s. And they do two things, which I think made blacks in Pennsylvania unique. They not only emancipated them, but they gave them land. And they taught them to read and write. So if you give a man land, he can read and write, he then becomes self-sufficient. To me, that's the model even today. Particularly our black boys that are in so much trouble. We got to make sure that they can read and write and have a skill. And so the Quakers did that. And that's why we have our first black middle class in Pennsylvania. For those who are Methodists, the great AME Church is in Philadelphia. Mother Bethel is there in St. Thomas. So it didn't surprise me that Richard Allen would leave Delaware, go to Pennsylvania, and found Mother Bethel. As you heard, I worked with the National Endowment. I funded Mother Bethel Church. So I take great pride in that connection with that. But that's what made Pennsylvania different. Also in the novel, unlike had it been in the Deep South, Dodo would have been murdered by the Ku Klux Klan. But because you were slightly north, not as hardcore like Mississippi and Alabama and those places, he was sent to a middle institution. So only, again, because of that Quaker influence, and it made Pennsylvania slightly different, not as hardcore. Now, what the author didn't mention, and he didn't have time, the big Jews in the Delaware Valley is the DuPont family. They were running, again, as immigrants. Louis XIV revoked the Edict of Nantes, and Catherine de' Medici had a St. Bartholomew Day's massacre where she murdered French Protestants and French Jews. So the DuPont family gets out of there, comes to the New World, come to Delaware, and what do? They build bombs and gunpowder. And that's how the DuPont family became millionaires overnight. My father worked for them. They were good. My father was their Negro. So we got all kinds of things from the DuPont family. I played on their estates as a child. My sisters went to the Ursuline Academies. My other sister went to their fabulous hospital, E.I. DuPont Experimental Place. I worked there as a freshman in college. It was very, very different. So the DuPonts were the rich Jews. They don't tell people they're Jewish because they change up and become Presbyterians. But they're just as Jewish as they can be. And they hide it. They don't make it public. But they made money from the Civil War all the way to the Vietnam War building napalm. They funded all of our wars. They funded the Civil War, the Spanish-American War, World War I, World War II, and the Vietnam War. That's how the DuPonts made their money. And that kind of Jewish person is not mentioned in the novel. What we meet are the Jews who came in the 1880s. They came with the Europeans, with the Russians, the Poles. And you talk about, or the person mentioned that they don't like themselves. Well, it all depends on where you came from. The German Jew, of course, is at the top of the scale. When I lived in Israel, it's still true. That's who runs Israel. And so the German Jew, because they were more educated, more refined, the German and the Austrian Jew is at the top of the list. Then you had those Jews coming from Eastern Europe, Slovakia, Romania, Bulgaria. And that's where you get that intra-racial conflict among the Jews themselves. And of course, if you don't know that history, you don't know. I've had the fortunate course of living mostly all over Europe, but also I stayed in Israel at the invitation of the Israeli government, and I stayed in Beirut with Yasser Arafat. So I got a chance to meet these people and see how all this interaction was. And then the neighborhood I grew up in Wilmington was very much like this. On the left side of our house were the Irish. Down the street were the Polish and Ukrainians, Greek Orthodox. And the Jews did own all the supermarkets, and rightly, they did get credit when other people would not. They owned all the little clothing stores. Black folks bought their shoes and all that. So the neighborhood I grew up in was totally diverse. And then because I was Roman Catholic, the Catholic schools integrated in the 50s. And that's how my sister got to be in the Ursuline Academy. My brother was Joe Biden's classmate. That's what we saw because we went by the Oblate Fathers. And so if you were black, you went to St. Joe's Catholic School. If you were Irish, you went to St. Mary's. If you were Italian, you went to St. Anthony's, because that's the way it was divided up. The Jews were catacornered in all of that. They did run Pierre DuPont High School. But again, there was this intra-class conflict that the author so well develops and threads that throughout the novel. So you see this conflict that's going on between these different ethnic groups and how blacks interwove into all of that. So you did have a conflict, but also, you know, there's intra-conflict with us. Light skin versus dark skin, those who claim to be Creole, those who are not Creole, those blacks who went to Howard University and were lucky enough to go to black colleges. And so we have that intra-conflict even with us. And so that is another dynamic, which we won't do here. That's a whole other book. But I just mention it so that we can have some more background on this. I don't want to, another thing that happens too, these Jews started out as peddlers on the streets, but in the end, they build John Wintermakers, they build Gimbels, they build Macy's, they build Kaufman's, and in the end, these stores were almost 100, 120 years before they went down, like Woody's and Hecht's. It took a long time for these stores to go under. Maybe you remember Raleigh's Haberdasher, Garfinkel's. Jews ran all those stores because they came out of these peddling shoes and clothes and jewelry and go all the way up, and they educated their children who became our doctors and our lawyers and our chief surgeons and our scientists and didn't need to peddle. So the next generation is not going to be peddlers. They're going to be on the stock market, on Wall Street. So that's the other thing that happens. It's an interesting dynamic that takes place. I heard people talk about Buffalo. I got so tickled because I went to Bishop Timon in Buffalo, in South Park. It was so few blacks. We came out of school one day and the kids said, "Ooh, colored people," and they rubbed their hands because you didn't see blacks in South Park, Buffalo. I also taught in New York. I taught at PS 288 in Brooklyn. So I had a chance to be all over the place. And so as I heard the different listeners remark, I just smiled. I didn't interrupt because I wanted to hear what they had to say. And I want to save this for later. Joan, I'm going to shut up because I know everybody got all kinds of questions. I know you got questions. So I want to give time for people to talk. You're on mute. Joan, you're on mute.
Okay. I was going to say my soror, Marsha Johnson, has some questions for you.
Sure.
Because we really want to gain more knowledge from you.
Certainly, I'm ready.
Okay, Marsha.
Hello, Dr. Miller.
You can say Sammy.
No,
I
wasn't raised that way.
My doctor is so old, it's older than you.
I doubt that. But in the novel, we see that the two families live in an area labeled as a ghetto.
Yes.
Can you discuss how the word ghetto came about? Then how does it relate to today?
Yes. Ghetto was always a place where they forced Jews to live in Europe, especially in Poland. Not so much for the German Jews, but those Jews in Eastern Europe were forced to live in these neighborhoods. So that's why when Hitler took those countries over, it was easy for him to pick them up and wall them off. You hear you heard about the Warsaw Ghetto. When he took Poland over, he actually locked them in that neighborhood. It was easy to do because they could find them. And plus, they wore the Hasidic Jews, of course, wore the clothing, so it's able to lock them up, identify them. And tragically, like we did in slavery, some Jews turned other Jews in. I was horrified to learn that even during the war itself, there were Jewish generals who worked with Hitler. There was a Jewish mystic who showed Hitler how to get to power, and the moment he got where he was, killed him. And so that ghetto was really a term only for Jews. When the riots broke out in the 60s in our cities, Jewish journalists took that name and put it on Black neighborhoods. We never used that term. We always talk about the Black neighborhood, Black community. And interesting enough, we will start adopting the term and start using the word ghetto and start telling people you act ghetto. We will pick up something that was labeled to us, but that was a term strictly for Jews in Europe only, and particularly the Eastern European Jew who was in Slovakia, Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, Albania, those places. The Jews in the western part of Europe, in Germany and Austria, did not live in ghettos because they had more money. They were highly educated. Even the Jews in places like England and Holland, those were very, very educated Jews. But in Eastern Europe, they were lower class, right next to the gypsies, really. So that's where that ghetto term came. And so they will put it on blacks, and we will use it. You have to be careful when people start labeling you, and then you start using it. Just like somebody said when we were talking about technology challenge, said don't use that word because then you internalize it and then you can't get rid of it.
Mhm. I have a follow-up question to
Sure.
that. What about in Venice, Italy, in the mid 1500s, where the segregated Jewish quarters were established, and that was um, referred to as a ghetto, or the Venetian word is Getto. So I don't know if that was ghetto or ghetto. Um,
What happened there from the old Roman Empire? Romans thought making money was dirty. And
mhm,
so Jews are forced to go into banking. Is what happens. And Venice was a powerhouse. Remember, there was no in the 1500s. There was no such country called Italy. What you had was called the Italian city-states, and
mhm,
they ran like nations. And when you go to Venice, you see it. The place is awesome, except for the stinky water that's in the canal zone. But
mhm,
St. Mark's Square, you see it was the Doge who was like the emperor in the city, ran the place. They were powerful, and believe it or not, they worked with the Muslims. The Muslims, when they began to conquer Europe, they locked Europe up except for the great Italian city-states. That would be Venice, Florence, Rome, Naples, and they allowed the Venetians and those Italian states to control the Mediterranean. That's why Christopher Columbus sails westward. They wanted to get to China, but the Muslims had the world locked up, and the Italian city-states had the monopoly. So Columbus, not thinking, finally realized the world's not flat, will sail westward, hoping to get to China. And that's why when he got over to San Salvador, he called them Indians. And Indians only live in India. But he was
mhm.
actually lost. And that's how that got to be. And that's how, because they were actually forced into money lending into the Venetian state. And that's where that comes from.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Now, the next question talks about the early connections between Blacks and the Jewish community. What were those early connections between Blacks and the Jewish community?
Great question. At the close of the Reconstruction, that is, after the Civil War is over, and they begin to run all the blacks out of the state governments, and everything goes down, white terror groups will take the country over. Very similar to what's going on right now. The Knights of the White Camellia, Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, they will take the country over, and we have lynching every day. We have kidnapping of black boys going into prison farms. What's being done about it? Jews, educated blacks, and Jews, the Spingarn brothers, will get with the great W.E.B. Du Bois, the first black graduate of Harvard with a PhD, and form the NAACP. It's first called the Niagara Movement, and then they actually will form the NAACP. So the NAACP doesn't start out as a black organization. It starts out with Jews and blacks and well-meaning white women. That's how the NAACP gets started as a reaction. The other thing that's going on, Ida Wells Barnett begins to record lynching because there was so much lynching going on of blacks. And so this is the response to this. And so, and remember, Jews were treated just as badly as blacks. They would burn a synagogue down in a minute. Or if they caught a Jew out at night, he got burnt. So early on, Jews will collaborate with blacks and form the NAACP, the Urban League. That's all those organizations get started with Jewish money, Jewish intellectuals, and blacks. Uh, and that's how that gets started. So in 1909, is the official date for the founding of the NAACP. And that's how that gets started. And that will go on up to about 1954. We'll have this coalition of Jews and blacks working together. After 1954, things will change.
And what happened then?
What happens is, well, two things. Between 1954 and I say 1964, Jews have become more wealthy. They are allowed to enter into Harvard and Yale and Princeton, and they begin to, a stratification takes place, a gulf, if you will, between blacks and Jews. And so it begins to separate itself. Um, and they go in a different direction and tend to side with white America a little bit more. They will begin to leave the Democratic Party and become Republican and will change. And by the time we get to 1970, it's really gone down the tubes because blacks also become more militant. Um, and you won't believe this, but the largest growing church among black people is the Nation of Islam. And that also frightens Jews. They see this militancy developing among blacks. And this new young black has a different attitude towards the Jewish population. We have the Black Panther Party. And in Africa also is changing because Africans, as they shed colonialism, they become more radical. And so that also, and you have blacks like Malcolm X going to Africa and bringing that back, and it frightens the Jewish population. It's a black person they've never seen before, and of course, we're not dependent on Jews for living and borrowing money and going to the grocery stores. We have a whole new black middle class, far more independent and not living. And then the neighborhoods start changing. You're not living next door to each other. They're far away, you're close by. I heard this person talk about New York City, how segregated it was and how mean it was in some cases. And all that begins to change. And so that separation does take place. And Jews don't feel as obligated to do what we call noblesse oblige, help their lesser brother. That's not there like it once was. Even now, used to be a time, many of the doctors in the neighborhood were Jewish. Now the doctors are Iranian. It's a whole new ethnic thing taking place. And so that also, I think, affects these attitudes between people.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing that I've noticed, observed is, if a totality of it's not even a race, but I don't even know what you call it because it's really a faith of people who have certain ethnic characteristics, but it's kind of changing over time. So a lot of times Jewish people aren't easily recognizable. So whereas black people are more so, you can't shed your blackness, but you can decide not to be easily recognized as Jewish.
Believe it or not, though, go look at some of J.A. Rogers' books. There are about 30,000 blacks who cross over every year and never come back. Believe it or not. Yep. Oh, yes, big time. We see what happened in slavery. We had this race mixing. We had the mulattoes, which were half black and white. Then we had quadroons, who were quarter black, and then we had the octoroons, who looked all practical purposes for white. And even during the Civil War, they fought on the Confederate side and had plantations, both in Charleston and in New Orleans. So there's always been a black population that was fair-skinned. I got it in my own family. And they cross over and never come back. I was stunned when I saw the numbers, but they run between 30 and 50,000 blacks cross over and never come back. So that's not necessarily true. And then we don't see African Jews over here like we do when you go abroad. When you go abroad, there's a large population of African Jews in those Muslim countries, in Libya and Egypt, Tunisia, and all those places. And they look very Negroid. And then, of course, you have that large Ethiopian Jew population. I had met them when I was in Ethiopia. So it all depends on where you are. And those Eastern European Jews, when they came here, They had kinky hair. My mother was a beautician. She used to do their hair. They used to get their hair fried just like we did. So it all depends. So it all depends on the Jewish population. I'm going to repeat again, and if you remember what I said, that German Jewish population and that Austrian and that Dutch and Belgium, they look Nordic, but the rest of them Jews are dark and swarthy and are very identifiable. I think that was part of their problem when they tried to get away from black people because they look so much like us. And if you look at the pictures of Ellis Isle, all those Jews had kinky hair and were dark. It's a ways down. That's why I said after the 50s, they start intermarrying with whites and they kind of disappear. But a lot of the Jewish population, if you look in the 20s and 30s, they were very Negroid looking with kinky hair.
Mm-hmm. Well, understood, and thank you for that extra information. Well, as a quadroon myself, it's hard for me to see why people want to cross over. I love being black, and because I am black, but you know, it takes all kinds, I guess.
I got an aunt who's still Spanish.
So, Ramarsha, I have a question.
Yes.
Dr. Miller, this is a little bit off topic, but you had mentioned it. We had in the past read books, 2 books really, where Black persons passed as white. And in both cases, they weren't happy. Can you shed a little bit about that? I know that's probably a psychological thing, but from
Joe,
a history point.
When you explain what you mean by not, who was not happy?
The Black people who passed as white. They always had some fear or some issues.
Yeah, but you need to give us more because, for example, are they unhappy about their career, unhappy about their family life, unhappy where they live? You need to give us more context.
I guess from my standpoint, they were always afraid of being found out as a Black person.
Yeah, but well, not only that, Joan, there's some people also who are afraid about their class. They will lie about where they were born. That's just not race. People lie about where they were born, who their parents were, what universities they went to. You get a whole bunch of stuff about people's unhappiness. And I think, Joan, you don't want to categorize people because each case is so different. When you get them, people don't like the sex that they were born with. It's a lot of things people are unhappy about. So you have to. I think you be on safer. For me, you be on safer ground when you take each case, because it's not always just race. Sometimes it's also class. Because why is my situation the way it is? Because as you know, there are people who don't want to go to HBCUs.
Mm-hmm. But in most of the literature that you read where you have persons who are passing as white, the one thing they will never do is have a child or children. Because us as a mixing bowl, we don't know what you're going to get when the baby's born. That's always a fear. Have you heard of that in history?
No, because I've studied that in detail. Now, I haven't seen a case like that, and I have a lot of mixed people in my family, but I haven't seen that. That's a new one. So that's why I said I would take each case differently.
Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Marsha.
Mm-hmm. Now, you spoke about 1954 as being sort of a turning point of when the Civil Rights Alliance between the Black community and the Jewish community took a turn. What role did economics play in the relationship between both communities?
I think after 1954, when Brown versus Board of Education is decided, and they said let's integrate, I don't think there was an open door come into our neighborhood. That door just was not opened. And if you notice, we had white flight. Even here in Prince George's County, when they said let's integrate, whites will pack up and move out further. They don't want these mixed neighborhoods. And and even though you can go to other places, Jews sometimes in these Ivy League schools control certain departments, and there's a gate. We'll let so many in, we won't let so many in. And so we see this stratification taking place and leapfrogging. Now, Blacks do make great strides, They make strides that they've never made before in all levels, but it's still not quantitative. I think, and I tell people this, I work in foreign service. When I got into the foreign service, this is my 24th year there. What stunned me was there were so few Black foreign service officers, less than 1%. And I worked at the State Department. I worked at USAID, which is no longer. I worked at the Commerce Department of Foreign Service, and I worked in agriculture. And Blacks made up less than 1% of foreign service. And then the promotions was 0.5%. And that was Black women and Black men. I think the current administration, people thought that, Blacks are running these federal agencies. They're not. And I worked at the National Endowment. And I don't care where you go. Blacks were always a minority, a small percentage. They made good money, but they were never in control of these agencies ever. And so while they made strides, it still, to me, wasn't quantum enough for us to say that the needle's moved where it should be. In fact, as you know, it's going the other direction now. And many of the gains that we made since 1954, they are turning that clock back fast. I used to have a professor at Howard, Elsie Lewis. She said, what happens is they'll open the door for about a 10-year, 20-year period. She said, and then it'll close for another 30-year period. So it opened under Lyndon Baines Johnson of the Great Society. It opened under Bill Clinton and Obama, but boy, is that door closed now. And you notice the first thing they did was they went after Harvard, Yale, and Princeton, admitting so many Black students. And then certain professions, they're closing the door. And so that's where we are now. That's where we are now. That door is really, really closing, like it's never closed before. I saw a statistic, 300,000 Black women unemployed overnight. That's an awesome number. Awesome. And Black women had really begun, at one time in Time magazine, they said the most desired employee was a female Black PhD. I'll never forget it, reading it in Time magazine. No longer. Just isn't. Catholic University, where I got my doctorate, I got it in 1977. No other Black male has gotten a PhD in history since 1970. I was the last one. 1977. In fact,
that was almost 50 years ago.
That's right. I was going to send one of my students there, and they said, Sammy, don't send him because the way you got through will never happen again. And they even changed the discipline where Blacks wouldn't even want to go over there. And when I did my doctorate, interestingly enough, I had to pass that foreign language exam. I did 18th century French literature and French science, and I did Spanish. Dr. Schwartz, who ran the German program, failed everybody at least 3 times. So you couldn't even get out the door. And again, that door is closed. So I don't even know if a Black male could even get into Catholic U and finish like I did in 77. But I know no Black males come out of there since I did in 77. I was the last one. And that's just Catholic University. That's not Harvard, Yale, and Princeton, and our first tier schools. Stanford, where I did my postdoctorate, same thing. You can count, that's what Condoleezza Rice is, handful. And then they're snatching, they're abolishing the Department of Education. So we're not even sure if we're going to get the money to go to school. And way back then, it was $1,000 a credit. I don't know what it is now in terms of cost. And and as you know, our parents believed that education was the foundation for making that next level of society. Take that away, what are you going to do? Right. It's a bleak picture. And then we're looking for that coalition with Jews because they were our great friends from the turn of the century up to about 54, but they're terrified now.
Well, thank you for this great discussion so far. Do we have any questions from the audience? If you have any, please place them in the chat. And while we're waiting for those questions, I'll ask another question.
I see Betty's hand up.
I see Betty Turner's hand raised.
Okay, Sarah, Betty.
Yes, Sammy, I noticed that you use the term integration. I am, of course, a product of segregation. And of course, as an educator, when I started teaching here in Anne Arundel County, the schools were still segregated. And in 1966, under court order or lose your funding, you must desegregate. So I tend to still use the word desegregate because
Mhm.
I really haven't seen too much integration. So how would you describe those two terms, or what's the difference in the uses of desegregate as opposed to integrate?
But I think it probably depends on the generation too. See,
Okay.
my experience was a little bit different. You remember I told you I went
Okay.
to Roman Catholic schools, and so the archdiocese intentionally in the 50s broke down all the black schools and sent us to the white schools. Betty, I never saw a black nun the whole time I was in school because we were taught by the Franciscan sisters of Glen Riddle, and so we did that. The public schools, Betty, you're quite right, did not integrate. Howard High School, where all the black kids went in Wilmington, stayed segregated. They didn't begin to let the black kids go into the white schools to almost mid 60s. And so, and it was trickled. They selected the neighborhoods where the black kids could go. Schools like Mount Pleasant and Brandywine, black kids never got there, just never did. And so you're quite right. The word was used, but in actual practice, it never happened. I think you described it clearly. And where they did want blacks is athletes. They wanted those blacks to win those games. And so they would take a black athlete in a minute.
Yeah.
Wouldn't educating or educate her, but they would take them. And sometimes tragically, they left after they used them up, no education at all. Sadly, and that's still going on.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Sorry, I gave you such bad news.
A question was asked, can you share what you are reading currently?
What I'm having people to do, I want them to understand what's taking place in America historically. So I'm asking people to go back. There's a book by William Edward Burghardt Du Bois. As you know, he's the first black graduate of Harvard in 1896. He wrote a masterful book called Black Reconstruction, where he looks at what happened after the black person finally got free out of slavery, had finally entered politics, had finally had his own banks and stuff under the great Booker T. Washington, but there was a white person, poor as I don't know what, that joined all these white terror groups. The chapter is called The Transubstantiation of the Poor White. And so people want to know, why are these poor whites siding with our current president when Trump is clearly not their social equal in any way, but he makes them feel good about being white. You're with me? And interestingly enough, they will tell you they voted against Kamala Harris, not because she was black, but I'm going with Trump. I saw one poor little white girl, she worked for the Forest Service. She said, I looked at Kamala Harris, I liked her. She said, but I pulled the trigger for Trump, and guess what happened? They fired her husband first, they fired her, and then they kicked her off, and they're both homeless and unemployed. And you can do white person after white person who's every day you cut the news on. They saw a white woman, she said she was in West Virginia. I was a mega Republican, I was all for it. The Treasury Department went into West Virginia and shut the whole town down. She said the whole town is in depression and collapse. And you see that story every day. But nevertheless, these farmers, they're going under. But they say, I'm sticking with Trump. And you have to understand, what's that mentality? And if you read that section about Du Bois, I'm white first, money last. It's fascinating that race is their God. And their other God is the gun. If I'm white and got a gun, I'm safe. And you read this every day, and that's what's going on. So that's what I'm reading. I'm rereading Du Bois's Black Reconstruction. It's a great masterpiece, and it really gives us a good idea of what's going on. And believe it or not, also, I'm rereading Souls of Black Folk by Du Bois because he talks about what's going on with the soul of the Black person. And then I've even got students reading Booker T. Washington Up from Slavery. Because the one thing about about Booker T. Washington, I was fascinated. When I worked for the National Endowment, I went to Tuskegee to fund it. And I wanted to find out what made Booker T. Washington such a big deal. I get to Tuskegee, I go to the archives. In the 1880s, it was an international school. He had students from Japan, China, the Caribbean, Latin America. And whatever you majored in, that's what you did. You did home ec, you cooked in the kitchen. You made bricks. Tuskegee is the only black school where all buildings are historic because the students they only did the design, but they made the bricks. And of course, he took the great George Washington Carver, stole him from Thomas Edison, and said, I'll build you a laboratory. And as you know, 57 products from the peanut, 54 products from the sweet potato. The makeup you have on your face came from George Washington Carver. And by the way, unlike me, he didn't cash in his paychecks. When they found his body, all his paychecks were there. So we need to canonize George Washington Carver. Now, people, I need my paychecks. I can't do that. But I was fascinated by Dr. Carver.
So, Dr. Miller, I want to reiterate the books you mentioned.
I will.
Was the first one Black Reconstruction in America?
Black Reconstruction by William Edward Burghardt Du Bois, and then Souls of Black Folk.
And Up from Slavery.
Up from Slavery, Booker T. Washington. And we add this too. Carter G. Woodson, The Miseducation of the Negro. Because boy, are we in bad shape. Please add that. Carter G. Woodson, Miseducation of the Negro. Masterpiece. E. Franklin Frazier, The Black Family. E. Franklin Frazier, Black Bourgeoisie. E. Franklin Frazier, The Negro Church. Because you know we got all these prosperity preachers taking us to the cleaners. We got to get this straight. So go back and get E. Franklin Frazier, History of the Negro Church, and of course Carter G. Woodson, History of the Negro Church. They're masterpieces.
I think these are novels that we have read in some of our collegiate classes or courses.
These are not novels.
I'm sorry, books.
Right, by the way, for you Deltas, you need to read Mary Church Terrell's Colored Woman in a White World. Now, why do I say that? What did she write for Delta? Hello?
Okay, what'd you say? I'm sorry.
Mary Church Terrell, her masterpiece, A Colored Woman in a White World. What did she
I'm
write
writing the
for
name down.
What did she write for Delta?
Oh,
was it her
I do know, but I'm drawing a blank.
Oh, I'm gonna call national.
Oh my gosh!
Don't do that. I want to keep my membership.
What did she write for Delta?
Oh my God!
Delta Hymns?
No.
Hills.
I'll tell you in a minute.
Oh Lord, I gotta call national.
What did she write? Mary Church Terrell.
Don't be looking up Google. Don't be Googling that. You supposed to know this right away.
Didn't she do the oath?
The oath.
Say it again.
The oath.
Yes, she wrote the creed for Delta.
Yes.
That's right. And I have an original copy in my possession because I wrote her husband's biography, and I lived with her daughter and spent my summers with them.
Wow.
And so when you come into my office, you see a picture of Mary Church Terrell in my office on the wall. That's why
I was going to say that, Doctor.
and then I published her father's will. So I'm very close to the Church Terrell family. They mean much to me.
Okay. Here's a question for you. Once again, off a subject. You mentioned these titles that we all should have read and reread, okay?
Yes.
What's your opinion on Black history that's being cut back in education?
You must be responsible for your own history. So first of all, you should take membership in ASALH. Let me read that. That's the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. You should get a membership immediately because they publish two great things. They publish the Black History Bulletin for young people, and for a more mature audience, they publish the Journal of African American History, and they have their convention every September where they have the national theme for Black History Month. And so you should make sure that you're a member and all your family are members so that we can propagate our history ourselves. You must do this job yourself. You can't let somebody else teach you. You must do it yourself. And as you know, and the reason I'm pumping this, of course, you know, I was their executive director. I was the editor of the Negro History Bulletin. And so I've been a member for over 50 years, and you should be. And you should support that institution and making sure that in your home you have it, in your schools you have it, that you celebrate our National Black History Month every February. They should know who the great Carter Goodwin Woodson is, the father of Black history. You should know him. George Washington Williams, the first Black historian. You should know who he is. You should know your history of Bowie State. Nelson Wells. Remember, Bowie State, we're not a Reconstruction school. We're not like Howard. They were named after white people. We're different. So you should know your history of Bowie State. For those Bulldogs who are on here, these are things that you should know. And so you have to support these things. And then, of course, you should come on campus and help all your Black colleges. You know, all it's 110. You should know them all because they came out of Reconstruction. And they all celebrated. So we have to do our own homework. You can't let somebody else write your history. I remember Armstrong Williams one day talking about Black women, on TV one day. And I said, some woman had sense enough to say, you know nothing about having a baby. That's women's stuff. You know nothing about a period. That belongs to women. Up here talking about stuff you have no idea. And sometimes people get stuff mixed up. He was talking about women should do that. You don't know. I can't say what I want to say. You know anything. These are women's issues. Getting that stuff all back. And by the way, there's something called ABWH, Association of Black Women Historians. We should know that. We should know about NCNW, right?
Yes.
Dorothy Irene Height, right? But preceding that is the National Association of Colored Women's Clubs, which is older than NCNW. They go back in, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you should know our Black women's group. Then the Association of Black Women's Business Women. We should. These are things that we should know and propagate and encourage. When I was at the National Endowment, I even went to Mother Bethel and I indexed and paid for the AME Christian Recorder, our first church magazine. You know, we have to know these things. Yes, these are important, and we must teach them to our children. The first anthem that my mother made me learn to play on the piano was which anthem?
The Negro National Anthem.
That's right. My mother made me learn Lift Every Voice and Sing. And we should know all three verses. And every time we have an act, I spoke at a church 2 years ago. I won't name the church. And the musician couldn't play it. No, he didn't. No, he couldn't play it. And I didn't want to go up to the organ and play it for him because I was the speaker. But these are things.
Okay, we have some questions in the chat.
Okay,
the question is, Dr. Miller, is there a way for the Black community to take our current political situation and make it work to our advantage and benefit?
That's an easy answer. First of all, make sure everybody in our neighborhood is what? Registered to vote.
Oh, okay.
That's an easy one. Make sure you're registered to vote. Make sure you go to, regardless of the party, make sure you're registered. Go to your political meetings. Make sure that when you nominate somebody, you know their background. Get off of Facebook and go to the real book. Look to see what's going on and educate yourself about what's happening there. So make sure that our kids can read a newspaper and can write. I got a 2-year-old girlfriend. She's on the iPad already. I thought she was gonna bring me a doll baby. She brings me her iPad and lays up in my lap with an iPad. we gotta make sure these kids can read. And then do computation. I even tell the reason why I continue to teach. I tell young Black boys, make sure when you go to interview, put a coat and tie on.
Say that again, doctor.
These young boys, when they go for an interview, put a coat and tie on.
Oh,
read,
coat and tie.
Read about the people who are about to hire you. Go in there knowledgeable so that you can articulate properly. These are just little simple things that we can do so that we can go to the next level. You must have a skill set. You're not allowed to live off your parents. You have to have a skill set. There's some homework. I even teach my business majors. Go become hedge fund managers. You know what the basic salary for a hedge fund manager is?
What's that?
$3 billion.
Wow.
Say it again.
3 billion.
That's right. I wear the business majors out about that. My father made me learn about stocks and bonds in elementary school. I can read the stock page in elementary school. Know what's going on with banking. These are simple things. Know the difference between a CD and a passbook account. Make sure that your passport is up to date so that you can travel around the world, yes, and not get picked up by ICE. There's a lot of basic things we need to do.
Okay.
And
now, if parents have kids that are either in public school or private school, and those courses and classes that you just mentioned are not being presented, what can parents do to ensure that those kids get that knowledge?
The first thing any parent could do, when you come home, bring me that class syllabus. Bring me the assignment. Make sure that your children are doing homework. You have to shut that cell phone down and make sure that they're doing their homework. That's a parental responsibility. That's not the school's responsibility. You're responsible for your children and whether or not they're educated. That's your job.
True.
And then if they're not articulating and speaking properly, writing well, then you go and see they have PTA meetings. It's more teachers there than parents, yes?
Yes.
Your job.
I've heard. I don't have kids, but that's what I've heard.
But it's your job to find out what's going on in that school. That's easy to do. And you look at the homework. Don't get mad at the teacher because they gave so-and-so homework and they can't. What amazes me at the college level, students say, Dr. Miller, we've already planned a trip. Then they just signed up for my class and they going abroad on a cruise. You're going to get a D or F from me. So help me God you are. That's the promise me and Jesus made. You don't have time for no cruise. You got to be in my class. See, we get stuff mixed up.
One thing I'll say about students who go to HBCUs like Bowie State, and I'm saying Bowie because I'm a Bowie grad. One thing I remember from being there was we got the book coursework and then we got knowledge like you're giving us right now from our professors. Would you say that's still a practice in HBCUs?
I can't speak for other schools, but in my department, we have 19 PhDs and they're on it. We teach history, we teach government, we teach geography, philosophy, and we teach religion. And anybody who taking an department, you're gonna get more than your money's worth. But you gotta come to class. Stop wasting that federal money that you've gotten or your parents that cashed out all that money. Can't waste that. And so, and I know people get mad when I say this, but it's true. You can't waste money. You only get to be young one time. That's not a do-over.
Yes, most definitely. We want to be mindful of everyone's time, and this is a great discussion. We want to keep it going. So does anybody have any other questions or comments for Dr. Miller, either related to the book and the history of Jews in America with the Black community, or just anything in general? Because we see that Dr. Miller has a lot of knowledge.
So our president had her hand raised a long time.
Okay. So our president?
No, thank you. Someone already asked the question about what we can do, and Dr. Miller has given us the blueprint. So we just got to follow his instructions. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Dr. Miller.
We still have a lot of guests on. I know Dr. Miller's knowledge has prompted you with some thoughts or comments. So this is an opportunity for you to voice that. We would love to hear from you.
Nicole Pearsall said she knows that Black Americans as a population are unrepresented as he had pop-ups as Black as unrepresented as business owners, but do you have any thoughts on why there are so few Black owned grocery stores?
What happened to us we let other ethnic groups come into our neighborhood and take the stores from the Jews. We let the Asians come in, and you can't go. I can't. I won't use a particular Asian ethnic group, but they came in and took those stores over. And the other problem we had is theft and robbery. When there was close to me where I live, a poor young man tried to open up a cell phone store, and he was robbed every week. It broke him. Lost his insurance, and so there is a serious problem. I hate to say it. We got to get a handle on crime and people who don't want to work and take from you. And so it takes a lot. And you know, when I do a grocery store, it's daily inventory. And people come in and steal groceries, steal food off the shelves, and they break the pork. And people decide, I don't want to do this. And young people don't want to do it. Which you saw in the novel. Look how Moshe complained. He wanted to shut that store down. Remember? And the wife fought him around the clock. It was her lifeblood, but he didn't want to do it. It takes a lot to run a grocery store. And my father used to tell me, theft, unfortunately, is a very, very serious problem. Even the Giant where I live here, they've closed all the salad bars down. I asked the manager, he said, Professor Miller, if they steal so much, I can't keep the salad bars open anymore. And I even went to the Giant in the white neighborhood. He said the same thing. They're closed. They're closing the South. So to run a grocery store is a major. And remember, Dan Zansky, who used to own Giant, sold it. Shoppers has been selling their stores, and they've been merging. Yes. It's a tough business. And number one, inventory, and then American employees demand a lot. They have unions. They're always demanding raises. And as you know, and since the president's slapping all these tariffs, most of our food, believe it or not, comes from these foreign countries. Our oranges and grapes and apples come from Latin America, and he's slapping tariffs right and left. I don't know how anybody gonna stay in business. We may wake up one day, we might wake up one day, we can't have any food. So it's a very, very tough thing to do inventory. And then you got to get banks who are willing to subvent money in the neighborhoods. You know, in Southeast, we can't keep grocery stores. The few that we have are packed up and left. We just don't have them, and so it's a very, very tough business to do.
And that leads to food deserts in certain neighborhoods.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
But then again, the fast foods pop up and are surviving. Like you go to Harlem, they have nice restaurants now, but there are a lot of fast food places up there. You know, McDonald's, Popeyes, Burger King, and all of that.
Well, again, cheap labor force. They're not going to demand but so much. But if you notice, if you go to those fast food restaurants, you won't in a month you won't find the same staff there. People are passing through all the time, and you need to stabilize your staff for the place to turn a profit. You know, it's hard keeping people happy, and then employees still.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is what I would like to do. Marsha, you have any more questions? Are you done?
I think I'm done.
Okay. This is what I would like to do. I really want to continue this conversation with Dr. Miller because he has a wealth of knowledge. So I'm going to say the book club portion is officially over. And our president has a comment or has some comments, but for those who want to stay on and ask Dr. Miller some questions, I'm willing to do that. So, Soror President.
Thank you, Soror Joan, and I will not be before you long. Dr. Miller, Soror Joan, Soror Marsha, thank you for an amazing book discussion. I want to thank the attendees for being intentional with joining us today. I also want to thank the Arts and Letters Committee for continuing to make the Delta Reads Book Club a success. This discussion for me reminded us of how the stories connect our history and our humanity, from Chicago, New Orleans, to Buffalo and Annapolis. Many of you noted the parallels between this novel and the previous book, Madness, Race and Insanity in a Jim Crow Asylum by Antonia Hilton, as well as the shared history of Crownsville and Pennhurst. I want to thank everyone who also shared their one word. Words like community, love, resilience, and connection captured the heart of our discussion. Again, we extend a heartfelt appreciation to you, Dr. Sammy Miller, who was introduced by Sora Betty Austin, for your powerful insights, your rich historical perspective, and for helping us to have this conversation. For those of you who don't know, this was a new platform for us, so we hope it was easy for you to access and join. And if you haven't done so, please take a few minutes to complete our survey. And again, thank you, Sora Joan, for being a great moderator. Thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Madam President, before you leave, you're not leaving, are you?
I'm going to stay for a couple more minutes.
I just want to salute Delta Sigma Theta sorority. You're always superior. I've been to a number of Delta affairs this year, even cotillions, and my God, this is at the top. This is at the top of the list for me. In fact, I took it to my wife and I said, "Look what these Deltas are doing." And I told her, I said, the Kappa wives are to become copycats, because you laid a beautiful blueprint for them to do something, and she agreed. I think I'm gonna get a few stars tonight. But this was just absolutely and Joan is my former student. You know, my heart's about to burst open. And Sora Betty Turner, who I just love so much as a bulldog. Y'all just have made my evening so much. And it was all the effort I put was worth it. I got up early in the morning and typed up my work. I read every night until I fell asleep. And it was all worth it. It really was. And I thank all the listeners for remaining. I really do.
Okay. For those who are still on, can you put in the chat if you're a Bowie State graduate, or really put in the chat whatever college or university you graduated from, so Dr. Miller can see.
Or Joan even attended Bowie State.
Huh?
Or even attended Bowie State.
Or even if you attended Bowie State, please put that in the chat for us. And Dr. Miller, while that's populating, I have a question for you. Someone in the chat had mentioned Greenwood, the successful town that was burned down to the ground. How did they make it happen then? And what can we do to duplicate such success now?
I don't know the story well enough to respond to that. So I'm going to respond. I don't like to respond to stuff that I'm not sure of. That'll get you in trouble. That'll get you in trouble every time.
Okay.
But if you will email it to me to Bowie State, I will. It's smiller at bowiestate.edu. I will give it to one of the professors and let them handle it, and I'll get back to the person. I really will. That's smiller.
Okay. I'll put your email in the chat for folks.
Yeah, and then I could have one of the other professors to respond to it.
Okay. Okay, put your email in the chat for folks to have.
Great.
So Dr. Miller, what else you want to talk about?
Well, I want to take my wife out, so you got 10 minutes.
Okay.
She didn't have dinner tonight. She's waiting on me.
Okay. Anything else you want to us to have knowledge about?
No, I think I've done my homework, haven't I?
Yes, you did, and we thank you and we appreciate it. Yep. So we have folks from University of Maryland Eastern Shore.
I just saw that.
Yes, Morgan State, Howard, University of Maryland, North Carolina A&T.
Aggies.
Yes.
Morgan,
and Sir Joanna Douglas. I thought I saw that in the chat.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Well, that concludes our book discussion. I'm going to say what our president said. Thank you so much for being with us. For those who have been with us before, thank you for coming back. And for those who've been with us again, we're glad to, or for the first time, we're glad to have you. Thank you to Social Action Committee. Thank you to the Arts and Letters Committee. And this has been a wonderful discussion. Sora Betty, your hand is up, and then we're going to go after your comment.
Yes, I'd just like to say this has been wonderful. as I was speaking to someone earlier today who knows you very well, said, yeah, that Sammy has a different skill set. He has all kinds of skills. I just so I'm happy to have had you on with us this evening. And I know I will see you around Bowie State, around the campus, or at some program or other. So thanks so very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
I
much.
enjoyed it.
Thank you
And
so
much
much.
love.
And I have to let you all know this one thing about Dr. Miller that was not mentioned in his bio. When I was at Bowie State, he was the best dressed professor on the campus, 24 hours a day. Yeah, so thank you for that.
Joan, thank you for thinking of me and including me, and just you've made my heart so glad. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Okay, good night, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.